The Celestial Spire was the most beautiful space station in the galaxy, and tonight it glowed like a diamond floating in the endless dark 12. Alien species had gathered to celebrate the signing of a great peace treaty, and the grand hall was filled with music and laughter and the shimmer of 1,000 light spark. Jian stood near the entrance in her simple black uniform. Watching the celebration with quiet eyes, she was human, and humans were considered the youngest and weakest species in the galactic community. Most of the aliens walking past her did not even notice she existed. Another boring night of standing and watching, muttered a Corellian guard nearby. His forearms crossed over his chest. Why did they even hire a human for security? She probably cannot lift a storage crate. Jian pretended not to hear the insult. She had been on this station for 6 weeks, and she had grown used to being underestimated. Chief Security Officer Korath stood across the hall, his massive Draken body covered in dark green scales that reflected the light like armor. He was nearly 3 meters tall and could crush a human skull with one hand. When he looked at Jian, his yellow eyes held nothing but dismissal. She was a token hire, a gesture of inclusion that meant nothing to anyone who mattered. But Jian did not mind being overlooked. She had learned long ago that small things often caught what giants missed. The music shifted to something soft and flowing, and the crowd parted with whispers of admiration. Ambassador the Zara Vin was making her entrance. The ambassador was Velothian, a species known throughout the galaxy for their grace and beauty. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, and she floated just above the ground, held aloft by the gas bladders inside her body. Velothians never walked. They drifted like dreams made flesh tonight. The Zara would give the most important speech of her career, and rumors said she was about to reveal something that would shake the foundations of galactic politics. Jian watched the ambassador rise toward the observation balcony, where she would address the assembled guests beneath a ceiling of stars. Everything seemed perfect. Then everything went wrong. The Zara stopped floating. For one terrible heartbeat, she hung motionless in the air, and Jian saw something flash across the ambassador's face. It was not surprise, it was fear. Then the Zara fell. She dropped like a stone and struck the marble floor with a sound that silenced every voice in the hall. Screams erupted from the crowd, and guards rushed forward from every direction. Jian found herself running before she made the conscious choice to move. She reached the ambassador and saw silver blood spreading beneath the broken body. Medical teams arrived within seconds, lifting the Zara onto a hovering stretcher and rushing her toward the emergency bay. Impossible, a Velothian official stammered nearby, his face pale with shock. Our people cannot fall. Our bodies do not allow it. This cannot happen. But it had happened, and Jian had seen the fear in the ambassador's eyes before she dropped. That fear meant something. Within an hour, the station's artificial intelligence completed its analysis and declared the incident unexplainable. There were no injuries that could have caused the fall. There was no poison in the ambassador's blood. There was no sign of any technological interference. Chief Korath addressed the senior staff in the security center, his deep voice heavy with frustration. Ambassador the Zara has entered a healing coma, he announced. She will survive, but she cannot tell us what happened. Our systems found nothing suspicious, so we must conclude this was a rare medical accident. The other officers nodded in agreement. It was easier to accept an accident than to admit they had no answers. But Jian did not nod. She stood in the back of the room, replaying the moment in her mind again and again. The ambassador had known something was wrong before she felt it. Expression of fear was not the face of someone experiencing a sudden medical problem. It was the face of someone who knew they were about to be attacked. After the briefing, Jian approached Korath with careful respect. Sir, may I share an observation about the incident? The Draken looked down at her with obvious irritation. The case is closed. Human. The ambassador looked afraid before she fell, Jian said quietly. She knew something was about to happen. Karth made a sound like grinding rocks. You think you saw fear on an alien face from across a crowded hall? I think you saw fear on an alien face from an alien face from an alien face from across a crowded hall? Humans are known for seeing patterns where none exist. It is a defect of your simple minds. He turned and walked away. Leaving Jian alone in the corridor, she knew what she had seen on Earth. She had spent years learning to read faces, to notice the tiny signals that most people missed. That skill had helped her solve a case that everyone else had abandoned, missing child. That the police had forgotten she had found that child alive, and now she would find the truth about Ambassador Desarajiyin. Returned to her small quarters and began reviewing the security footage from the reception. The station AI had cleared everything. But Jian did not trust machines to see what humans could see. She watched the same moments again and again. And she noticed something strange just before the fall. The Zara had been looking at someone in the crowd, someone whose face was hidden by the angle of the camera, and the ambassador's hand had moved toward her communicator, as if she wanted to send a warning, but never got the chance. Jiyin saved the footage and made a note. Someone had wanted the ambassador to fall. Someone had made the impossible happen, and Jian would find out who. 3 days passed on the celestial spire, and life returned to normal as if the ambassador's fall had been nothing more than a strange dream. The delegates resumed their meetings and their meals and their endless negotiations. Most of the station's residents seemed eager to forget what had happened, but Jean could not forget. She spent every free moment studying the evidence, searching for details that the official investigation had missed. The station AI had analyzed everything and found nothing suspicious. But Jian knew that machines could only see what they were programmed to see. Humans saw differently. During her lunch break, she sat in the crowded cafeteria and listened to the conversations around her. A group of Corellian engineers laughed at a nearby table. The human guard is still asking questions about the ambassador, one of them said with amusement. She thinks she can solve a mystery that our best computers declared unsolvable. Humans see patterns in chaos, another replied. It is a defect of their primitive brains. Jian kept her eyes on her food and said nothing. She had learned that arguing with doubt only made it stronger. She would let her results speak for themselves after lunch. She began interviewing witnesses from the reception. Most of them dismissed her with polite impatience or open scorn. But one witness reacted differently. Her name was Miru, a Kellen trade assistant with large dark eyes and delicate feathered arms. When Jian asked about the night of the fall, Miru's hands began to tremble. I did not see anything unusual, Miru said quickly, her voice too high and too fast. The ambassador fell, and that is all I know. You were standing very close to the balcony, Jian said gently. Did you notice anyone near the ambassador before she fell? Miru's eyes darted toward the door, her feathers ruffled with nervous energy. I must go. I have work to do. She hurried away before Jian could ask another question. Her fear left a trail as clear as footprints in fresh snow. Jian made a note and continued her investigation that evening. She discovered something important. The ambassador had been scheduled to give a speech at the reception. A speech that many believed would contain a major announcement, but the speech file had been deleted from the station's records 6 hours before the even. Jian searched for backup copies and found nothing. Someone had carefully erased every trace of what the Zara had planned to say. She leaned back in her chair and thought about what this meant. Someone had not wanted that speech to be heard. Someone with enough access to delete files from a secure diplomatic system. The next morning, Jian reviewed the environmental data from the reception hall. She found another clue. The Temperature on the observation balcony had been slightly higher than the rest of the hall at the exact moment of the fall. The difference was small, only a few degrees above station standard, the AI had flagged. It is a minor fluctuation, within acceptable limits, but Jean remembered what she had learned about Velothian biology. During her training, their internal gas bladders were sensitive to temperature changes. A sudden burst of heat could disrupt their flotation, even if only for a few seconds. A few seconds was all it would take to fall. Jean felt her heart beat faster as she understood what had happened. Someone had engineered the fall. Someone had used heat to disable the ambassador's natural ability to float, and they had done it so precisely that it looked like an impossible accident. She needed to confirm her theory, so she sent a message to Dr. Yunho-san, a human scientist who worked in the station's research laboratory. He was one of the few humans on the station with expertise in alien biology. He agreed to meet her that afternoon. "Your theory is correct," Dr. San said after examining the data, his expression serious behind his glasses. A focused heat burst at exactly the right temperature could temporarily disable a Velothian's gas bladders. The effect would last only a few seconds and would leave no trace on medical scans. "So someone tried to kill the ambassador," Jian said quietly. "It appears so," the doctor replied. "But proving it will be very difficult. The method was designed to be invisible." Jian thanked him and returned to her quarters. Her mind raced with questions. Who had the knowledge to plan such an attack? Who had access to the balcony's environmental controls? Who wanted Ambassador Dasara silenced? She began building a list of suspects. 3 names emerged from her research. One had motive and opportunity, and the technical skill to commit the crime before she could investigate further. Her communicator buzzed with an anonymous message. The words glowed on her screen like a warning. "Stop now, human. You are asking questions that will get you killed. Humans are replaceable. Do not forget that." Jian stared at the message for a long moment. She felt fear curl in her stomach like a cold snake, but she also felt something stronger than fear. She felt determination on Earth. People had told her to stop searching for the missing child. They had called her obsessive and foolish, but she had kept looking until she found the truth. She would not stop now. That night, she arranged a secret meeting with Miru the frightened Kellen, agreed to meet in a storage area on the lower level, away from cameras and crowds. But when Jian arrived, Miru was not there. The storage area was empty except for scattered crates and shadows. Then Jian saw the signs of struggle, scratches on the floor, a broken communicator, a single feather floating in the recycled air. Miru had come to the meeting, but someone else had found her first. Jian picked up the feather and held it in her palm. The stakes had just grown much higher. The killer knew she was investigating, and the killer had made their second move. Jian reported Miru's disappearance to Chief Security Officer Korath the next morning. She watched his face carefully as she spoke, looking for any sign that he already knew what had happened. The Drekum listened with his arms crossed over his massive chest, and his expression showed only mild annoyance. "The Kellen probably transferred to another station," Korath said dismissively. "Her species is known for sudden departures. They follow opportunities like birds follow the wind." There were signs of struggle in the storage area, Jian insisted. "Scratches on the floor and a broken communicator. I believe she was taken against her will." Korath's yellow eyes narrowed. "You were meeting with a witness in an unauthorized location. Human. That is a violation of protocol. I should report you for interference in a closed case." "The case should not be closed," Jian said, keeping her voice steady. "Ambassador Dasara did not fall by accident. Someone made it happen. And now a potential witness has vanished. Enough." Korath's voice boomed through the security office. Several other officers looked up from their stations. You are a junior guard with no authority to investigate anything. Go back to your post and do your job. Or I will have you transferred to waste processing. Jiyeon knew she could not win this argument. She nodded and walked away, but she did not stop investigating. She simply became more careful over the next 2 days. She gathered evidence in secret. The deleted speech file pointed to a cover-up. Temperature spike pointed to a calculated attack mirror's disappearance, pointed to someone eliminating witnesses. 3 clues. 3 threads, all leading to the same dark conclusion: someone powerful was hiding a terrible secret, and they would kill to keep it buried. Edge examined the small device that security had found near the balcony railing on the night of the fall. It had been labeled as decorative jewelry, a piece of ornamental metal work that one of the guests must have dropped. But when Jiyeon scanned the device with her personal equipment, she discovered something. The official scanners had missed. The device contained a miniature heat emitter. It was precisely calibrated to the exact temperature that would disable Velothian gas bladders. This was not jewelry. This was a weapon. Someone had planted it near the ambassador and activated it remotely at the perfect moment. Jiyeon felt a chill run through her body as she realized how carefully the attack had been planned. The killer had known exactly how to hurt a Velothian without leaving evidence. The killer had known exactly when to strike. During a crowded reception where chaos would cover their tracks, this was not the work of an amateur. This was the work of someone smart and patient and completely without mercy. But Jiyeon was patient too. Cross-referenced the guest list with the technical specifications of the device she looked for. Someone with the knowledge and access to create such a weapon. 3 suspects emerged. First was Delegate Varn Keth, an Ildari diplomat known for his opposition to the peace treaty. He had argued publicly that the agreement would damage his species' economic interests. His homeworld had a reputation for advanced weapons technology. Second was Director Celis Crane, a human administrator who managed the station's environmental systems. He had the technical access to manipulate the balcony temperature, but his motive was unclear. Third was Trade Minister Holax, a Karelian official with connections to several criminal organizations. Had been under investigation for corruption before the evidence mysteriously disappeared. Any of them could be the killer. Jiyeon needed more information. She sent an encrypted message to Lieutenant Voss, her former captain, who was stationed on a patrol vessel in a nearby system. His reply came within an hour, and his words made her blood run cold. Be careful, Jiyeon. I have heard whispers from intelligence contacts. Something big is moving through your station. Weapons shipments headed for the Varan conflict zone. Someone is using diplomatic channels to smuggle death. And someone important does not want anyone looking too closely. Weapon smuggling. But explained everything. Ambassador Dazara must have discovered the smuggling operation her speech was going to expose it to the entire galaxy. The killer had silenced her before she could speak, and now the killer was silencing anyone who got too close to the truth. Jiyeon thought about Miru, the frightened Kellen who had known something dangerous. Was she still alive? Or had the killer already disposed of her? The next evening brought terrible news that answered one of her questions. Director Celis Crane was dead. His body had been found in his quarters, slumped over his desk with no visible injuries. The station AI declared the death a heart failure, a natural event requiring no investigation. But Jiyeon knew better. Crane had been one of her suspects. Now he was gone, eliminated like a piece being removed from a game. Bored, the killer was cleaning up loose ends. Jiyeon realized with growing horror that she might be one of those loose ends. She was alone in this investigation. She had no allies and no authority. She was facing an enemy who could strike from anywhere. Fear whispered in her ear, telling her to stop it, told her to walk away, to let the dead stay buried and the guilty go free. But another voice spoke. Louder, it was the voice of the missing child she had found on Earth. It was the voice of every victim who had been abandoned by those who should have protected them. She could not stop. She would not stop. Jian made her decision. She would set a trap for the killer, and she would use herself as bait. Jian spent the night piecing together the final parts of the puzzle. By morning, she understood the full scope of what she was facing. The smuggling operation was bigger than she had imagined. Illegal weapons were flowing through the tip of the yacht's celestial spire in diplomatic containers, hidden among legitimate cargo and protected by someone with high-level access. The weapons were destined for the Varan conflict zone, where two species had been fighting a brutal war for nearly 50 years. Someone was making an enormous fortune by feeding that war with instruments of death. Ambassador Desara had discovered the operation. Her speech was going to name the person responsible and expose their crimes to the entire galaxy. But she never got the chance to speak. Jian reviewed the evidence one more time, and every thread pointed to the same named delegate. Varan Keth, the Ildari diplomat, had opposed the peace treaty because peace would destroy his hidden business. He had the connections to run a smuggling network across multiple star systems. He had the technical knowledge to design the heat weapon that brought down the ambassador, and he had diplomatic immunity, which meant he could not be arrested without permission from his own government. Varan was untouchable. He was protected by laws designed to keep peace between species. But Ji-Yun was not looking for an arrest. She was looking for the truth, and she knew exactly how to expose it. That afternoon, she requested a private meeting with Chief Security Officer Korath Drekken. Received her in his office with obvious reluctance. His big yellow eyes were hard with impatience. "I told you to stop interfering," Korath growled. "Why are you here?" "Because I know what happened to Ambassador Desara," Jian said calmly. "And I think you know too." Korath went very still. His massive hands curled into fists. "Explain yourself." Jian laid out her evidence piece by piece. The heat weapon, the deleted speech, the smuggling operation, the connection to Delegate Varan Keth. She watched Korath's face as she spoke, and she saw something she had not expected. Pain. "I knew," Korath admitted quietly, his voice losing its usual thunder. "Station Command received pressure from powerful people. They told me to close the case and stop asking questions. So you covered it up," Ji-Yun said. "I followed orders," Korath replied. But his words sounded hollow. "The Ildari are important allies. If we accuse their delegate without absolute proof, we risk a diplomatic disaster. Maybe even war. Varan is smuggling weapons that are killing thousands of innocent people," Jian said, her voice rising with controlled anger. "He tried to murder an ambassador. He probably killed Director Crane. He kidnapped Miru. How many more people have to die before someone does what is right?" Korath looked away for the first time. Jian saw the weight of guilt pressing down on his massive shoulders. He had not wanted this. He had simply lacked the courage to fight it. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Help me trap him," Jian said. "Give me one chance to get a confession. If I fail, you can transfer me anywhere you want. But if I succeed, you become the officer who brought down a murderer and saved the peace treaty." Korath stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his ancient eyes. "You are either very brave or very stupid." "I have been told I am both," Jian admitted. A ghost of a smile crossed the Drekken's scarred face. "What is your plan?" Jian explained everything. Korath listened without interruption. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "It might work, but if it fails, Varan will kill you, and there will be nothing I can do to stop him. I understand the risk." Then we moved tonight. 2 hours later, a rumor began spreading through the station. Ambassador The Zara was waking from her healing coma. She had requested permission to complete her interrupted speech. The medical bay was placed under heightened security, with guards stationed at every entrance, but Jian made sure that one guard rotation left a small window of vulnerability, just a few minutes when the eastern corridor be unmonitored, just enough time for someone to slip. Inside the trap was set. Now she needed the killer to take the bait as night fell over the station. Jian took her position in the medical bay. She stood beside the ambassador's bed, where the Zara lay motionless in her healing pod. The ambassador was not actually awake. The doctors had confirmed she would need at least another week to recover, but the rumor had done its work. Jian checked her hidden recorder one more time. Everything was ready. The lights flickered once, then twice. She heard the soft hiss of a door opening somewhere. In the corridor outside, someone was coming. She pressed herself against the wall and waited. Her hand rested on her side. On her heart pounded against her ribs. A figure emerged from the shadow stall, and elegant, with skin like polished black stone. Delegate Varan Keth moved with the confidence of someone who had never been caught, never been challenged, never been held accountable for anything he had done. He approached the healing pod with a small device in his hand. It glowed with faint blue light. "Hello, Ambassador," Varan whispered, his voice smooth and cold. "I apologize for the interruption, but I am afraid your speech must remain unfinished forever." Jian stepped out of the shadows. "The speech about your smuggling operation?" she asked. "The weapons you have been selling to both sides of the Varan war?" Varan spun toward her. His dark eyes widened with surprise, before narrowing with calculation. "The human guard," he said softly. "I warned you to stop asking questions. I do not take orders from murderers." Varan laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "And what exactly do you plan to do now, little human?" Jian smiled. "I plan to let everyone hear the truth." She pressed the hidden button on her communicator, and Varan's confession began playing through every speaker on the station. Every delegate on the Celestial Spire heard Varan's words echo through the corridors. "I apologize for the interruption, but your speech must remain unfinished forever." The confession was undeniable. Varan's face twisted with rage as he understood what Jian had done. "You recorded me." "Every word," Jian replied. "The whole galaxy just heard you admit to attempting murder." For a moment, Varan stood frozen with shock. Then his expression changed from anger to something far more dangerous: cold calculation. "It does not matter," he said quietly. "Recordings can be faked. Evidence can be dismissed. I have allies in every government across 12 star systems. You are one small human. What can you possibly do against all of that?" "I can survive long enough for the truth to spread." Varan moved faster than Jian had expected. Ildari were apex predators on their homeworld, evolved to hunt across vast distances without rest. He crossed the space between them in a heartbeat and swung his fist at her head. Jian ducked and rolled aside, barely avoiding the blow that would have crushed her skull. She drew her sight on and fired. But Varan was already moving. The energy bolt scorched the wall. Behind him, he kicked the weapon from her hand and grabbed her by the throat. His fingers were like iron bands around her neck. "You should have listened to my warning," Varan hissed, lifting her off the ground. "Humans are fragile. Humans are weak. Humans are nothing." Jian could not breathe. Her vision began to darken at the edges, but she had prepared for this moment. She reached into her pocket with her last strength and pulled out the small device she had hidden there, the heat emitter that had brought down Ambassador Desarash. Pressed it against Varan's chest and activated it. The Ildari screamed as the focused heat burned through his clothing and seared his skin. His grip loosened for just a moment. Jian drove her knee into his stomach with all the force she could summon. Varan released her and stumbled backward. Clutching his wounded chest, the door burst open behind them. Korath charged into the room with a squad of armed guards. "Delegate Varan Kath," the Draken announced in his thundering voice. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Ambassador the Saravin, the murder of Director Celis Crane, the kidnapping of trade assistant Miru, and conspiracy to smuggle weapons in violation of 17 galactic treaties." Varan tried to run Korath, caught him with one massive arm, and slammed him to the floor within seconds. The killer was bound, and helpless Jean slumped against the wall. Breathing hard, her throat burned where Varan had grabbed her. Her body ached from the fight, but she was alive, and the truth was finally free. The days that followed brought change to the celestial spire, like a great wind sweeping away the Wayor. Old and bringing in the new. Varan's confession had been heard by thousands of witnesses across the station. The evidence Jian had gathered proved his crimes beyond any reasonable doubt. His smuggling network was torn apart, his allies arrested, and his diplomatic immunity revoked by his own government. They had no choice but to abandon him or face the anger of 12 united. Species trade assistant Miru was found alive in a hidden compartment aboard a cargo ship that had been scheduled to leave the station that very night. She was frightened but unharmed. Her testimony confirmed everything GM had discovered. Ambassador Zara awoke from her healing coma 1 week later. Her first request was to meet the human guard who had saved her life. Jian stood beside the healing pod, her throat still bruised and her ribs wrapped in bandages. "I'm told you refuse to give up," Zara said softly, her silver eyes warm with gratitude. "Even when everyone told you to stop, even when no one believed you, you kept searching for the truth. I saw your face before you fell," Jian replied. "You were afraid, and I knew that meant something was wrong. I could not ignore what I saw." Desara reached out and took Jian's hand. "The galaxy often underestimates your species," the ambassador said. "They see small bodies and short lifespans and assume that humans are weak. But they do not understand what truly makes you strong." "What is that?" "You see what others ignore," Desara answered. "You persist when others give up. You care when others calculate. You fight for justice, even when it costs you everything. That is a power greater than any weapon or any technology." Chief Security Officer Korath found Jian later that evening. She was standing at the observation window, watching the stars drift past. "Station Command wants to give you a promotion," the Draken said, his deep voice unusually soft. "A new position with real authority and a significant increase in pay. You have earned it." Jian considered the offer for a moment. "Thank you," she said, "but I think I will stay where I am. I like being a guard. You see more from the ground than you do from the top." Korath shook his massive head. "You are a strange creature." "Pardon, Jian, I am human," she replied with a small smile. "We are all a little strange," the Draken laughed. "A sound like distant thunder rolling across mountains. I underestimated you," he admitted. "I called you primitive and weak. I told you to stay in your place. I was wrong. You were following orders. That is not an excuse," Korath said. "I was afraid of the consequences of doing what was right. And you are not afraid. That makes you braver than me." Jian turned back to the stars. She thought about the missing child she had found on Earth so many years ago. She thought about Ambassador of the Sara falling. Through the air, she thought about all the small mysteries that others had dismissed as unsolvable. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the smartest or the longest lived, but they were stubborn. They were curious, and they never stopped asking questions. Her communicator buzzed with a new message, a report about a suspicious incident on the station's lower levels. Another puzzle waiting to be solved. Jian read the details and felt a familiar spark of interest light up inside her chest. The galaxy was vast and full of secrets, and Park Ji-yeon was just getting started.